So did everybody have a good morning this morning? Wow, is that bad? Doc, I don't know if I want to talk now. So did everybody have a good morning this morning? Yeah. Yeah, what a beautiful morning out, relatively cool. I was come up yesterday afternoon late. Roger was nice enough to haul me around, look at all these crops. Man, what he's done in the last few years, managing his soil, managing his mind, how you think and how you look at things in a natural thinking way, instead of more on is better. Doesn't matter if it's vaccines, or if it's chemicals, or if it's nutrition, it's the amount of seeds you plant. It's amazing what we can do with less. And you know, this planet was developed by the God that said it's completely sustainable. It needs nothing but someone to take care of it. And here we come. In our infinite wisdom, what we've done, we took a beautiful, in our area, native system prairie that was self-sufficient, self-providing, one of the most nutritious prairie systems in the world, and we turned it into this monoculture, basically 1, 2, 3 crop systems. And the system collapsed, is collapsing as we speak. So, what can we do? We can do exactly what Roger's doing. Changing our mind of what we've been taught to try to think in a holistic way how we can make a living, provide for the animals and our families with less than we've been doing, and give Mother Nature a chance to heal itself. The reason you see so many weeds out here is Mother Nature saying, I don't want it buried. Period. And she will cover it with the most beautiful set of kosher, pigweed, Johnson grass, crabgrass, stickers, whatever you can think. Have you ever noticed that? Then it won't be buried if she covers it. So, 14 years ago, there was a new day at Emmons Farms. I'd had it. I was doing no-till. I thought I was a great no-tiller at that time, started in 95. And by 2000, 2005 or something, I hit a plateau. It just wasn't working. The soil was still collapsing. It had compaction issues like we talked about out there this morning. And then I heard David Brandt talk in 2010. And it just blew me away. And so Dave and I worked together for a while. He got me started. It was simplistic, simple approach. Just to plant a seed. Plant multiple seeds. And so I started doing that. So I've done a lot of things. I've worked for a president in the last administration at USDA. One of the better experiences of my life, and yes, the USDA and the federal government is messed up. Secretary Perdue, when he asked me to join him and the president, I said, man, I'm not qualified. He said, we want somebody with common sense, practicality, and the nerve to do what needs to be done to put common sense back in the federal government. Wow. That's what I'm trying to do on my farm. So I done that. Came back home after that was over, started working at the Conservation Commission, back to the districts that I was so fond of. In the mentoring program with General Mills, at putting common sense and practicality back on the ground in a mentoring program. Then I got this opportunity out of the blue, and I'm looking for another job, trust me. I'll be 63 here pretty quick, and I'm beginning to think that maybe doing less is even better than it has been before. But I went to work for Farm Journal in their Trust in Food initiative, that they want to put regenerative mind thinking processes in front of you to start trying to change agriculture as a whole into that thinking. And under that, I have Trust in Beef, America's Conservation Ag Movement, and a $40 million Climate Smart grant from the USDA that we're going to get started on pretty soon. So Trust in Beef. Why Trust in Beef? It's a year and a half old. How many of you know about Scope 3 emissions? 1. Anybody else? 2. Scope 3 emissions is what you and I do on our farm and ranch. Whether it could be from fertilizer, it could be from diesel, fuel, just emissions as whole. Companies, like some of these, have to start reporting all their emissions. Scope 1, which is from their factories and processing facilities. Scope 2 is the vehicles and all the transportation that they have bringing and moving their product around the sale. And Scope 3 is in their sourcing sheds. And that's where the problem is how do you report on his land that you don't own, that you don't operate, and you have no control over? So what we're trying to do with Trust in Beef is connect the companies that are investing $250,000 a year with us to assist Farm Journal, which is 150 years old this year, that most of you think is a pretty trusted magazine that really tries to tell the American farmer and rancher story, how to connect us together and bring some incentive for us to start trying to do better, to put regenerative practices on the ground and have traceability for the companies that they're going to pay us. So it's a year and a half old. I'm in charge of that. America's Conservation Ag Movement is with NRCS, where we're in the 4th year of conservation ACAM is what we call it. And what these private companies do, once again, it's about a $250,000 a year check that they give us to match NRCS dollars, dollar for dollar, to put climate smart, regenerative, minded thinking on the ground and practices. So I don't have much of a big job, you know. And then I got $40 million that I got to put on the ground in 19 states. So what does that have to do with us today? I talked about Farm Journal. It's human dimensions of change. It's how we start thinking to change for the future. We know, how many of you have noticed the weather is different? There's more than 2. How many of you noticed it's more violent or wicked when it does come? Okay. Now, we're not going to talk about what's causing it, because I don't know, we know exactly what's causing it. I've heard some pretty good strategy lately. Elaine Ingham told me that it's because of the nearly 100 years of removing fossil fuels and burning them and pumping water like out of Ogallala, that we have now changed the weight load on the spear. And we're tilting more. Maybe that's the most common sense approach that I've heard. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Opportunity or obstacle? That is a question. How many of you see that's an obstacle? Really? How many of you see that as an opportunity? A few. See, it depends on how you look at that picture. Is the trooper looking at that as an opportunity for revenue or other benefits? Is the driver looking at this as an obstacle to my delivery? Or is he thinking it's an opportunity to share a donut with a friend? You think of it several different ways. Say what? That's right. Depends on how the conversation goes, doesn't it? So what happens if an opportunity comes along and I don't take it? I would not have a wonderful experience to be the president and a great Secretary of Agriculture, an undersecretary to work with. I wouldn't got to work with the Conservation Commission with a great team, travel all over the country. If I'd said no, I'm not interested. I want to stay in my comfort zone. Because if you don't take opportunities when they come, sometimes the door gets shut. It can be challenging. So like Dave talked this morning, let's think about how we think and how we approach things. Is there more than one way to do things? This is a friend of mine bought this propane trailer, and I come by and I saw this on his pickup one day. I said, "What's the deal?" And he said, "Well, I bought that at an auction 45 miles away the other day." I said, "Well, is the hitch broke, or is the tires bad, or is the bearings bad?" He said, "I don't know." I drove over there and I thought, I don't want to blow a tire out or a wheel bearing out. And I had my hydro bed and the chain, so I just picked it up and drove 90 mile an hour home. Would I have thought of that? Maybe. Maybe not. Because there is more than one way to do things. And sometimes it's the most simplest thing. It's like the compaction test out there this morning. I kidded about being scientific. Most people wouldn't think that you would let someone that weighs 300 pounds, very fit individual, stand on your hand and it'd be comfortable. But you need to do that sometimes. You've never done that. Didn't bother me at all. But for him to stand on my hand with nothing to protect it, I imagine maybe 100 pounds maybe of pressure. You didn't put a lot on there. Everything we do on our soil has an impact. Everything. It's our opportunity to make sure that that's a positive and not a negative. So changing our soils have changed our lives at Emmons Farm. The old way or the better way. This still goes on in my area at a alarming rate. Our nation is eroding away at 1.7 billion tons of soil a year because we're still doing it the same way. And all we do is try to work the ditches in, bulldoze the ditches in, fix the tears, and spend money degrading a resource. It's not even a good Band-Aid. We try to Band-Aid it, and it still works. Or we can work with nature, not against her. And actually, we're across the road. You want to know where that's at? See that stubble field right there? I should have took a better picture. So this is literally across the road. Some of you have been there. A lot of you have been there. Things that's out of my control are action of others, the past, the opinions of others. And once again, now I don't worry about that like I used to. What happens around me, but in my control are my thoughts, my actions, how I speak to myself, how I spend my free time, how I handle my challenges. And if you think these systems approaches don't come with challenges, you're wrong. It's agriculture. I know that I can't control the weather. I know that I can't control the markets. And I know that I can't control my wife. It's a fact. Nor do I want to control any of them, because I will screw them all up. But there's things that I can do. I can set goals. What I give my energy to. Instead of worried about the markets and worrying about the weather, what can I do to mitigate that? And how can I manage that myself? We cannot force someone to hear a message they are not ready to receive, but we can never underestimate about the power of planting a seed. And think about that. Think about that. If you noticed on the way down this morning, we drove by fields and fields of weeds, and we drove around Cornwall yesterday. And then I drove by Rogers, and guess what? I saw limited weeds. You still got some weeds, but they're manageable. Very manageable. So, what do? When we harvest a crop, we plant a seed. We try to plant a diverse seed, much like the prairie does. This mix here is about 15 to 18 different things. I planted up to 30 before. I plant a lot of 20s. If you'll notice, it's very stressed and very dry, and I'm very truthful. I don't try to hide things. This is during the dry period. We've been dry for about 2 years at home. But we always plant, and we always have something going on, because I'm a rancher too. I have about 2,000 acres of farm ground that we no-till and rotate crops on. I have about 300 mother cows, give or take. This past July, I saw the drought was coming on. I took some of the advice Dr. Dave gave out earlier. We culled 150 cows. So older cows that had done a great job for us. They ran their cycle. Market was pretty decent at that time. We sold them. And then as the drought increased and came on, people started selling. Now they've sold all their old cows, they sold their bad bag cows, their open cows, and now they're selling young cows as bred. And this was in December. And I told Ginger, I said, you know, the weather, I've been dealing since the administration. I've dealt with several climate hubs in the Southwest and Oklahoma. And the climatologists tell me we're going to get into this change. Pretty soon it's going to be a wet pattern. It may be fall, but there's a pretty good chance in May and June to have some decent rains in our valley. And so I took a leap of faith. I sold my old cows for $10.50 a head, kept the calves, and I bought young cows that was 4 years old, that was long bred for $1,300. I thought it was a good trade. And I bought about half back because I still don't have a lot of forage. But I've always got something. I try to have something green and growing year-round somewhere that I can put a cow or a calf on. Does it always work out? No, it doesn't always work out. But I try. A lot of you saw me before, saw that this was in 2011. This is when I first got started. We tried to simulate what everybody likes at home, bare soils in the summertime. My cover crop never got a lot taller than this because in 11 we cooked and it was very dry. But what we learned from that, we killed that cover crop, left it covered, it did its job, it was pretty thick, and then we went back to wheat the following spring. You can see that square right there. That's where we had no cover crops. And Jim Johnson with Noble Research standing right there, and here's my NRCS. You guys play a very important role as well, and that's me with the hat on. You never noticed I've got a hat once in a while. I said, Jim, what's going on here? He said, man, I don't know. I said, well, you're the researcher. And so he went to, and he got his probe, and he probed around in here. He said, you have a hardwire. Because his probe would only go in about 16 inches. And I said, what about out here? And he said, well, you had cover crop there, so I imagine it's dry and hard too. He went out here and put the probe in all the way to the T-handle, We called NRCS to bring a Giddings probe. They come out where we had bare soil. It was 16 inches to dry dirt. Where we had cover crops, it was 33, almost 34. And that changed me. Period. Because it was the opposite of what my dad and granddad had told me. If you have something growing, it's wasting water. If it's in between your cash crops, like weeds or cover crops. Exactly the opposite of what I've been taught. And they took that back and they measured it in the lab where we had no cover, we had 4.6 inches of water, and where we had cover crops, we had 7.52. And I never looked back. Matter of fact, I stepped on the gas because that's exactly what I wanted to see. I didn't believe that, by the way, to start with. I had to see that myself. Because it went against what the traditional teaching had been. So we measured year 2, but we measured at different times of the year. Now this year we used more water in the blue because we started this thing called grazing on our farm ground that we hadn't done in a long time other than wheat pasture. And what happens when you go to grazing, sometimes it gets mature and it starts reproductive mode and it uses more water. But you know what we were pulling? About at that time, about $120 an acre in beef off that. Unheard of. And people said, Jimmy, you can't do that. You're not going to have any water for your wheat the following year if you do that. And we learned how to manage that. But what you notice is when we come back in February, we're water ahead. And every year that NRCS has done this for me, it's been that way. In the beginning, people told me you can't grow a cover crop because we don't have enough rain in western Oklahoma to grow one, much less continuous or 2. And you know what? They were right. You know why they were right? Because we had destroyed our soil and we didn't have the ability to take in the rainfall that was coming. I'm going to show you about that. We learned if you kept it covered and the living root in the ground, the weather was 113 degrees ambient when I took this last summer. 81 degrees. Walked across the road in that same neighbor's field, 129. Amazing what cover can do for you. We had a field day down at Emmons, big burns around this soil pit, sand rock in the bottom, not much soil, but good quality. It rained that afternoon and filled the pit up. Not from the surface, because you see nowhere that a ditch eroded to run in there. Because Allen had multiple species cover crops for years, 20 years down there. Earthworms galore, an old root mass. Water was streaming in the sides of that pit, just like a sprinkler. And that changed me forever too. Because that's not the way we were taught. We were taught that you had to plow the ground to loosen it up to get it to take water. And what I've learned now, like we saw out in Rogers Field this morning, what one utility pass can do. Now, I'm not telling you to quit plowing completely. I'm telling you to minimize your impact. I had a group of Australians come. We dug this soil pit weeks before this. The Australians have come and gone. What I'm fixing to show you is out them earthworm burrows, and I don't have the sound on, I'm going to show you because you can see it's still wet here. The water's just soaked away. But on the walls, all the earthworm holes, black carbon was running out of them earthworm burrows from the carbon that I've been storing in the ground, had multiple. You see there? Look at that. just amazing what we saw that day. It was all around the pit. It wasn't just one place. See right there. So there's things that we can do in a short time. So then we started figuring out how to measure water infiltration. And like we heard this morning, there's some new imagery out that we can use. This is a mini distance infiltrometer. We used multiple rings that we hydraulically pressed in the ground. We've used a new technology. Where'd my NRCS people go? Dale, have you tried one of the new? Yep. All good ways to measure. All good ways to measure. There's some more accurate than others, but some of the simplest things you can do will give you a good idea of what's going on. I travel a lot. I am standing in this soybean field in Manchester County, Tennessee. They call this the Holy Grail field. And you pull that back and then crimp or roll down rye, cereal rye grass is 6 foot tall and planted the soybeans in it. And why would you even do that? Is because you can build aggregation like we was talking about this morning. You guys that saw this before know that I want to say, Ray Charles can tell you where the water's going to go if it rains. And remember about the gas flow this morning? If you're trying to work below ground and you got to breathe, but you got to get rid of CO2, you know what happens in here? If we seal this up and turn the air conditioner off and take the doors shut, we're going to eat all the food that's left. It was wonderful, by the way. And we're going to eat and drink everything in here. And we're going to be all right for a while because some of us got some extra to live on. But pretty soon, we're going to run out of oxygen in this room if there's none coming in. And then we got CO2. And it's not going to be pretty. That's why this is critical. You zoom in on that at about 250 power. That's what that looks like. That's an aggregate. And that's all the pores and the gas flow that can go in here. And why is all that critical? Because the nutrient sequestration of cereal rye, this is done from Rick Bark in Indiana. He looked at the biomass of 2-inch cereal rye and the nutrients that it brings in. You can see up there, nitrogen, phosphorus, all the nutrients down through here. Every 2 weeks he measured 8-inch rye, 18, held it down too quick. 18-inch rye. Look at all the nutrients that it's creating for you. See, maybe we don't have to buy them. Maybe we just plant a seed. Okay? And the dead rye, later, see, it's done starting to cycle through. It's not in the plant no more, so where's it at? It's right where you want it. So the power of cereal rye in dollars, 12-inch rye. Look out here at the totals on the end. $200 an acre, all the nutrients. Even after it's dead, it's 200. It got up to 400 here. That was based on the prices last year. This was done in 22. Fixation clover. Look at the biomass out here on June 8th, from May 20th. Amazing what these can do. But you know what? If you put them all together, you have a 20-to-1 ratio of carbon and nitrogen. That's dead on. But if you mix them all together in a big cocktail, May 20th, June 4th, June 8th, June 24th, look at what that, wish we could, that's serious dollars, folks, that is produced. something to think about. My lovely assistant's going to work on that for me. That was in 22. So then in Tennessee, I walked 25 steps, approximately 70, 100 foot, over into the neighbor's field. It was a great no-tiller. There's no cover crops, no diversity. And I'm going to zero in right there, in this area. See that little stem right there? Where's the water going to go? Soybeans planted about the same time. They were good soybeans. They were just about this tall instead of this tall. Good soybeans. But then if you zoomed in, that's the surface. If it rained 4 inches today, he's not going to get but maybe a quarter inch. Remember what I said a while ago when I started? They said I didn't have enough water. Look at the Gulf. Look at the streams. How contaminated. We saw that water quality issue this morning out there. Good rotation, good cover crops, good diversity, same old thing that we've been doing. So I come back home, everybody says Oklahoma soils are red. My neighbor's soil, if you've been to my farm, this is west of my farm, 1.5 miles on the same elevation, the same soil that maps out on my soil, and this is mine. It can be done. So when we harvest, we plant, go right into it. Now, remember this morning when I was showing you, when Michael was talking about the lower stories here, the mid stories here, and the upper story is here. You want this density in here. And I think that's one thing that I would recommend to Roger that you got to start working on is the density in here. Multiple species. There's sun hemp right there. There's sunflowers. There's a pigweed. There's corn. There's another sunflower. There's beans in there. There's peas in there. A whole, and there's some brassicas in there too. I would normally see them. I think they're right in there. But then we're going to graze that. And once again, we talked about this with Dr. Dave this morning out in the field, and he addressed it in here a while ago. It depends on what you want to do. If you're feeding an animal, whether you're feeding it in a feedlot or on the farm, you need to balance the nutrition for the needs of the animal. What we love to do, and Doc talked about this a little bit while ago, about right now, that field we were looking at, that's cow candy, period. What we love to do is we like to put our cows and calves in this. This is a little more mature than where we was at this morning. And we like to graze them in there 2 weeks, maybe 3, get them used to moving in different paddocks, and then we come and we gather the cows. And we bring the cows home, put them in the lot for a few days till they kind of settle down. And we leave the portable corral in the field. The calves will come and walk around the corral and bawl once or twice and go back to grazing. And since we started doing that, our animal health at weaning went from up here at cost and multiple treatments like he was talking about to 0. I've lost 1 calf in 8 years doing that. I don't really know what happened to that calf. I think I do. I think it's quick pneumonia, but I don't know that. Because quite truthfully, the cover crop was about 10 foot tall, and we didn't find it in time. And a lot of people said, well, that's what I'd be afraid of. Maybe you can't see them. But once again, when you move them every day, you get to see them. I just didn't catch him. Now, Dr. Dave talked about being accused of being a minimalist. I'm not suggesting you do this or even try this. But what I've done is I started looking at my pastures, my cover crops, and managing for nutrition and started sending samples off. And I quickly learned how good my nutrition was getting because of good ranch management and rotation. And I took away the salt. And then I took away the minerals. Now, I'm a veterinarian, and noble research said, Jimmy, you're setting yourself up for a possible wreck. Either in conception, birthing issues, down the road. That was 8 years ago. And I quickly found I had one ranch were scattered out in 2 pastures that I could not do that in. I had to feed some mineral because I was low in copper, I was low in zinc, and I was low in boron, I think. Other than that, I had all the nutritional needs my cows and calves need. Now please don't go home and try that, because you may set yourself up for a wreck. Try to figure out what you're growing and how nutritional it is. Because see, I'm pretty sure that they didn't haul minerals and protein out to the bison herd. I'm pretty sure that the inputs were pretty low on that system. I'm sure there was some loss in mortality, I'm not saying that. But as a whole, they were a pretty healthy society. And I am accused of being the minerals. No, I can't even say it. Getting by on the very least I can. But on that one ranch, I have to. Now, we'll bring them calves back in. If there is blackleg in our area, especially when it's dry, we'll give them a blackleg shot. And we'll normally give them about a 7-way, 5 to 7-way respiratory. Once in a while, we'll give them a nasal too. But that's it. My wife told me that before I came up here, she looked. We bought 2 bottles of Draxxin last year. We bought, I think she said, a bottle of, I'm trying to think of the name of the drug. And 1 bottle of Newport. That's all we bought, 300 some calves that we have a year. Sometimes we do heavy stock density, but I'm gone 200 days a year. I have 1 wife and 1 hired hand to take care of all that, and they can't do it all. So we don't do a lot of this, except on places that I really want to improve. And when I'm home for the break, we concentrate on that. When we're done grazing in the fall, this is what I want it to look like. I do want some standing up. Some people will tell you you want to trample it all down so it doesn't oxidize and lose nutrients. But if it's going to snow, it's going to blow. And I want to be able to catch that. But on the ground, much like this morning, if you slide your hand under that residue, you'll find that we have no compaction issues because of the dust. Now, the last 2 years, that's been very challenging. Why? Because I've not been able to grow enough due to lack of water. Now, my profile lasted quite a while. Some of us talked about that this morning in here at lunch. You can go longer in a drought if you got your profile full. Once again, when it comes a big rain at the end of the drought, you won't be able to catch it all, if possible. And all we want to do is cut a notch and drop a seed back in that. If you think weeds can grow through all that, you'll find that there will be limited weeds. Only in a few little thin spots that might be a pickweed will find its way, or pushweed of it, but not much. Common sense is not a gift, it's just punishment because you have to deal with everybody that doesn't have it. Dr. Rick Haney will tell you that in Washington, D.C., they use this thing called uncommon sense. And as a whole, in agriculture, I think we use a lot of uncommon uncommon sense. I do consulting work in my spare time, and I have this good friend of mine that hired me in north central Oklahoma to help him. So we came, we pulled soil test, I asked him his goals, what he told me he wanted to do. And we planted, we looked at the test, I said, man, you don't need anything. You have everything you need right now. Let's just plant. So he planted, and then it started raining, perfect timing. It was a warm season. He wanted us to put actually together for silage. And he called me and said, well, it's looking a little yellow. I think I need to put some nitrogen on it. I said, well, it's been cloudy for 10 days. It's been raining. There's no sun out. Just be patient. He said, I know we're deficient. We need to put some nitrogen out. I've always put nitrogen out. I said, there's a new sheriff here, remember? And we pulled a Haney test. And we know exactly where we're at. Okay. I could tell he wasn't satisfied. Sun coming out, things started drying up. He called me, well, it's a little better. But you know, if I don't put down some nitrogen, I'm going to lose some tonnage. And I said, what are you paying me for? If you're not going to listen, listen to me and look at your test. I said, if you really want to know, pull you a tissue sample, much like Roger and them did. Send it off. Find out where you're at. I didn't hear back from him. He said, you pull the test? Yeah. I don't know if it's a good test or not. I said, what did it tell you? Well, it's sufficient. Everything's perfect. He said, duh. See, he'd been working on this premise of uncommon sense that I needed nitrogen. I need nitrogen. So I think we need to work on that. This is much like what Dr. Dave had. Simple, easy, more vaccines. The more you can do, the better you will be. You know, we've always heard that. But complex, but right. Management, having a veterinarian come, help you consult you, having someone consult you to help you through this. You ask Roger, he's got a good team of soil health alliance that's been helping him, mentoring him. Got Dr. Dave helping him with these animals. You saw the results from that. But the majority want the left turn. I don't know why. It's hard. I got 2 sprinkler systems. Several of you in the room have been there. I showed this at No Till on the Plains a few years ago, and I told the guy I was putting on 2 inches of rain, and he said, you can't do that. There's nowhere in the world you put that much water on with a sprinkler and not have standing run or runoff water. I said, well, if I told you it rained 2.5 inches that night, I went down there and shut the pivot off, so it's had 4.5 inches on it. He said, well, I can't do that. I said, well, I didn't say you could. You've got to fix your soil. So when this big rain comes in, we're not in the wet season yet, by the way. What we're experiencing is not La Nina yet. It's coming. So you better be prepared to take that 4 or 5 inch rainfall. So what that lead to, that's calling my NRCS friends back out, my soil scientist, my cameraman, and an intern. We built this gigantic 4-foot wagon wheel ring. We put GoPro cameras on the sprinkler. We parked it, and I can't move. You can see because we're fixed to the ground. And I put 7 inches on it in 1 hour and 40 minutes. And I've done that with 50 agronomists from Indigo Ag there. And they said there's no way they'll believe that if I had been standing here. And right at this point, we're at 6 inches. You might see anything pretty neat happening other than just going straight in. We shut the pivot off. The rain gauge was completely full. There was a little bit of water standing right there. In 14 years, I've been able to do that. Because soil scientists, and documented what I've done. Not me. I had help. And then they dug this up. And you look here, and someone said, well, I can't really see that, so I turned it around. What it used to look like down in the profile now, and what it now looks like on top. We've heard about carbon markets, that's the thing, that's the rage now. Well, I've got some. But what Steve told me next was something that I hadn't really anticipated. It was about reclassifying my soil. The original soil survey mapped it as a youthful event. It was very young soil, about 500 years old actually, that didn't have a very dark surface. It was very light in color. That's what Steve Allspaw, he just retired this week, a good friend of mine. But today I see a dark soil that we can now call molly and reclassified as a Fluviente capital soil. And actually we're 2 shades darker than we need to be to do that. There's only 2 people in the United States that's documented that. That's Dave Land and myself. And why? Because we have really good friends here in RCS that understood what we were doing and were real willing to look at that. I think there's hundreds of us across the country that have done this, that haven't been recognized yet. And what does that really mean? Well, there's more to the pie than just the crust. My mom used to talk about how light and flaky her crust was. She took great pride. I said, I'm just worried about the filling, Mom. That's what I want. So how important is the soil aggregation, the soil health? Well, it's literally everything, beginning with infiltration rates that we talked about, water hold capacity, carbon storage, and nutrients. If we can get an 8 to 10 inch rainfall event, we can take most of it in, or all of it. That provides multiple benefits from future water to grow crops. More nutrients stay in the field instead of downstream, and our soil stays in place. Pretty simple. If you really want to understand this, read the journals back Lewis and Clark when they started surveying the country, and there's other great journals across the country. And when they talked about crossing creeks and major rivers, it wasn't a 20 or 30 foot drop off in the plains. It was gradual. Now they had to float the wagons across sometimes if the streams were up, but the banks weren't very steep until we went to breaking out the prairie. Greg Simons, that works with the Mormons, a good friend of mine, started digging back in the flow of the Mississippi River. And what he learned is, originally, when they looked at the Mississippi River, it come up, a big rainfall event, and then it went down. Now, it was still, they called it the Big Muddy, but it was nothing like it is nowadays. But he got to noticing that when we started breaking out the prairie, and the faster we got with tillage, the more erratic the river got. Huge floods. Down to nothing, can't float a barge anywhere. We experienced that this last year or so. We started building dikes to contain it. And all that means is you're trying to make the river wider. There's just some of that uncommon sense that we've done. But I say let's put some common sense back in and let's start looking at what we can really do. So I've got a set of slides now from all across the country. Y'all have seen this from down at Rush Jackson's 5-inch rainfall event. We had major 6-inch rainfall infiltration in this field. Good management. Some say my math is off here a little bit. That depends on your soil, and it does. Dale will tell you that, you can't always infiltrate in different soils the same rate. It depends on how different it is. I get that. But I think I'm pretty close in this field here. But his neighbor can only infiltrate a 1/2 inch an hour. Notice how much greener it is here. This is 2 weeks later. Notice how much more water is over in the neighbors. He took another picture. I had to go down and see it myself the next day. Still running out of this field. Excuse me. If it rains this afternoon, where's that water going to go? They ain't staying in the field. It's going to go down the bar ditch and it's going to look like this. Silton, he had fertilized that field. The dry fertilizer before the rain. Guess what else is in there? Across the road, no problem. Up north, now, Mark and Annette Thomas, Lamino, Oklahoma, the neighbors, Mark and Annette, better picture on it after it kind of broke. They've got triticale planted, it's coming up. This guy never did plant. It's either too muddy or it's blowing away, and time he got the sand stopped from blowing, it's too dry to plant, and he didn't plant in the mud. Mark and them took this out of the bar ditch. They still have a little field. They've only been doing this 3 years. We sent that off to the lab. By the way, at the commission, my fellow employees wouldn't accept this sample because these were not sanitary jugs. And I get that. But Mark really wanted to know, so I told him, I said, go to the extension office and get some sanitary jugs and we'll pour that in there and we'll send that off. Don't tell me what. 18 times the amount of nitrogen, 12 times the amount of phosphorus than this. Unnecessary spending. North Dakota in the Red River Valley, Michael Larson. He's been in 3 years. Now you see a little bit of water over here and a little bit in the ditch, but nothing like the neighbors. Then there's Jeremy Wilson in North Dakota by Jamestown. It had rained 12 hours all day. It hailed. Some of y'all, Michael and several of you in here, had horrible hail this past week or two. It hailed half that time. Oh, God wants you to hear. He went out after it quit, and I want you to look how clean that water is. This water is running out of his neighbor's field up here above. If you'll notice, there's no ditch, so to speak. It's washed the residue away, and he talks about this. There's still residue here, but it's not a 2-foot deep ditch. It's a lowering in the field. He's talking about it's aggregated but still holding. And watch what he does here. He said how sweet the water was. 14.3 inches of rain. Could he hold it all? No. Could he hold most of it? Yes. But he didn't lose anything other than some residue that is quickly fixed by a cover crop. That's what's possible. My milo last summer was a failure. I never did harvest this, but I grazed it. My neighbor's milo. Dry year. See any difference there? Remember, I talked about a little resilience. If you can fill that profile when you need it, you can last a little longer. Did I harvest it? I did with my cattle. Michael Thompson. Michael's the neighbors. Michael's the neighbors. What did Michael do? Put polywire, and you run your cattle all winter. All winter till May. What do you think his neighbors done? They couldn't graze that if they wanted to. You know why? Because the nitrates are so dang high in it that they couldn't. There you go. So, do we plant green? I hear this all the time. Yes, we do. And I hope we can do that this fall and next spring. Can we do it all the time? No, because we're in a dry area. This is what it normally looks like if I plant green. That's sesame. Sesame told me I couldn't do that either. But you can. A lot of residue planting. 18 months in the field. I'm telling you, the time is now to do this. We've been on this downhill spiral, and input's going this way. How many of you tried to buy a new tractor lately? How many of you bought a new feed pickup? Buddy of mine just did. $91,000 for a 1-ton single wheel, single cab with a hydro dead on it. $91,000. Now, cows and calves are at a better price now. They're going to be for a little while. For a while. So can we just do nothing? We can. That's what we've been doing. We're pretty good at nothing. Done the same way. It is impossible. I don't want to change. I'm going to have a failure if I do that. And yet we have failures every day. Or we can just do it. Nothing's impossible. You know what's impossible on my ranch? Anybody want to speculate? Dr. Dave, what do you think is impossible on my fields, my range?
Not very much.
Nothing if I don't try it. If I don't try it, it's going to fail. There's nothing impossible. I will get some result. It's not impossible to do. Most people at home want to grow this many months and leave it fallow and barren. I want to do this. Can I always do that? Not if it never rains. I'm going to be challenged. But you know what? It started raining again. It's only been 2 years. So it can be done. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to plant multiple species. I'm going to graze it because I'm a rancher too. Good cow candy doesn't hurt anything. I'm going to grow some rye in wheat country. Remember me talking about, I don't care what some people think, but I try to be a good steward. When I harvest rye, I blow the combine off in the field. I make sure the trucks are tarped and sealed. I've only picked rye out of 2 neighbors' fields. I think it was probably a bird or a rat or something that carried some over there. But I went and picked them up myself. So I'm a good steward. And now I don't hear anything from them. So if you do that, don't blow rye off going down the road with the combine and in the bar ditch. We harvest rye for cover crop seed. And then we plant corn once in a while. July 15th. Everybody said, whoa, really? It is. So you got to watch the days of corn, shorter version of corn, in the brown. But by the way, we throw it over rye with the combine on purpose because I didn't want to pull a drill. So look here. Now once again, I said I'm a cattle man. We talked about grazing stalks. What's normally lacking in a stalk field? Protein, because it's all brown and dead. 0 inputs. I put a little of that. I'll tell you what exactly I put. I put some compost tea. I put some humics, some folics. I put like 5 pounds of nitrogen, liquid urea nitrogen in this. Looks pretty starved, doesn't it? What it looked like. But this is what I was after. Okay, I forgot to put this in. So Dr. Haney, he shows this all the time. This is a test out of Illinois up here trying to figure out where the optimal curve for nitrogen for corn was to get high yield. Now, if you listen to traditional testing labs, they will tell you that if you put 0 on, you're not going to grow any corn because it takes 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, depending on where you're at, to grow that. But Rick said, look at here. They're growing from 50 bushels an acre to 160 bushels an acre with 0. So something's wrong in her thinking. Yeah, there's an optimal curve up here, but why aren't we worried about being in this area? Why do we want to be up here and add all that expense for just a few bushels more? It's this thing called yield that we try to hit. You know, I have yet to have my banker said, how many bushels do you make this year? When I go into reorganize and go again next year, he always wants to know how many dollars I've got in the bank. Or he may ask how many bushels I got in the bin, and then he'll do the math at $5 a bushel or whatever it is to figure out how many dollars that is. So I raised corn, but I really wanted this. Why did I want this? Because I got a set of yearling cattle that I'm running on warm season cover crops. In the drought, this was irrigated by the way, that needed some good groceries. And boy did I have it. So if you look at this, in 18 months in that field, I spent $50 an acre for biostimulants. I planted rye. I put $40 an acre for care for fence, moving the cattle, calling wire, water, harvested the rye, planted the corn, harvested the corn. This is my expenses. I grazed the rye. I took this many pounds of beef off. Some of that we sell direct, most of it we don't, but some of it we do. I harvested the rye, I harvested the corn, and that corn rye mix, I took $600 an acre all winter, multiple grazings through the winter. We had a warm winter. I'd hit it, move on. I just kept moving the paddocks, then I'd come back. Them steers were monsters coming out of there. Now, if you think I'm off on the math, go ahead and change that to $500, $800, $1,000. You say that's not possible on my farm? Maybe it isn't. But is this scenario at some modern value? Yeah. If you're only spending $285 and you're making $500 over here, still got some money. Since the days that we've done this, we've cut our fuel cost by $100,000. My fuel guy hates me. We're the best friends. He said, don't you need fuel? Fertilizer by $80,000. Look at your budget, and if you could take off $180,000, would that help you? Maybe. Does that help you, Roy? Yeah. A little? Yeah. Talk about tillage. We talked about that a little bit this morning. So if you live in the ground and you're working for Joe up here, and you do this too, and this, how do you think they take that? See, we don't think about that. We really don't think about that. Well, I want to put it in perspective for you. This was my town leading May 31st, 1947. For an hour, they watched this coming. One of them days that you could really see it. And this is what happened. The water tower is right here. My granddad was in the cellar right there. If you notice, there's no telephone poles, no electric poles, they have no water. What do you think the community done? They had to stop everything that they done. They buried a few that didn't make it, and then they started rebuilding. What do you think? What do you think these guys done? They stopped working. They buried a few, and they started rebuilding. Now we talked about today, doing this once is not the end of the world. I don't recommend it. I don't like it myself. But if you do it once, they'll rebuild it. What if you do that 5 times a year, 6 times a year, 7 times a year. My granddad talked about how many people it's affected because all the farmers in the surrounding area, what they do, they came to town to help build houses, brought lumber. They all worked to help take care of themselves. And what a great community. And I think we've lost some of that, by the way. We still do a pretty good job, but not like we used to. But guess what happened to the surrounding farms and ranches? They weren't as productive because they all stopped to help rebuild. And if you have tornado after tornado after tornado, you just keep burying people. So that's what I'm trying to say. So patience, persistence, and management equals success. If you don't have this persistence in today's modern agriculture, you're not going to make it. And you better have this if you want to get to here. So really, how much money do we save and make? This is a traditional tillage system. These are all OSU custom rates, so that we're looking at this fairly. Deep tillage patch from my neighbors. This help most get rid of that straw, because Lord have mercy, you can't have straw and residue on top. And now you got weeds, so you got to sweep it, and then you got to field cultivate to pack it back down because you ripped it up. Fertilizer, cultivate, plant seed, you got to fertilize. $163 an acre. And that's not counting wear and tear and upkeep. You look at my system, we spray, burn down, or roll down, or use cattle to terminate. However you want to do that. I figured that $16 an acre, no-till plant cover crops. I try to stay around $18, $20. I haven't been able to do that this past year because seed grew up a little bit, so we're over 20, 25. Seed cost, terminate cover crop, bioinoculants. I like to use some of them to a point where I don't need them. Compost tea, urea. Figure this out. If I'm saving $120 an acre times 2,000 acres, 240 grand. Plus I reduced 180,000 of inputs. My banker kind of likes that. Russell Hedrick, here across the country, 2018, no spray, no post spray on bean, chemical savings, 19,800. Haney test said you're all right. Your phosphorus is put down a little. They saved here, a total savings, $91,000. The ship doesn't sink because of the water that's around it. The ship sinks because of the water that gets in them. Don't let what's happening around you get inside and weigh you down. Don't let the coffee shop or the neighbor making fun of you that you have some weeds or that looks horrible, that's trash farming. If you do, they will pull you in the vortex. I refused to go to the quick stop for several years. I got tired of being sucked down. And then I could just see people like, that kid's not going to make it. You've all seen this, but I still love it. I'm a John Wayne fan. I can't help but love Westerns. How do you stop a runaway stage? I've seen John Wayne do this, and several actors go from A to B to C to D to E to F to help the dads win the stress here. Is there another way to do that? Nope. Do you ever think John Ford and John Wayne sat down and have a bourbon at the end of the day, like they always did, have a cigarette, and said, John, why don't you just shoot the lead horse? And I'm sure they said, no, you can't do that. Sure would have saved John a lot of stress. Sure would have saved him a lot of danger. She would have still been happy. We gotta look at the way we think about how we do things. And by the way, I'm not proposing that we shoot any horses. I'm saying there's always another way to bring the propane tank home. Long live the soil, our lives depend on it. Soil is everything. You look at the Roman Empire, and I've been there, the best architects done massive things that we can't even figure out today how they've done it. The sheer manpower, sheer will and persistence. But you know, the reason they failed, they destroyed their land, they destroyed their food supply, they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Ever heard that in agriculture? I need another quarter, I need another quarter, I need a few more thousand acres, I've got 15, I need 20. And what happened? When the barbarians come along, it was very easy to overrun them because they spread their resources out too far. The greatest population of thinkers, and they couldn't feed themselves. You know, there's a lot of people who will tell you that our government's going to fall within. Because our country may not figure this out. I think we can. I think we can. You know, some of these companies tell me farmers and ranchers don't want to change. And I say, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. They said, well, prove it to me. I said, if we didn't want to change, we'd still be using a stick to put a seed in the ground. We would either be using an ox, a horse, a mule, a steam engine, the first tractor, the first rubber tire tractor, the first radio on the fender, the first cab, the first guidance, hydraulics, live PTO, you name it. We've been changing the technology since the beginning of time. What happens is sometimes we don't understand it and we're a little slow. But we've always changed. I'm just saying we need to step the game up before it's too late. Something to think about. Look at what Dr. Dave has helped Roger then do with these cow herds. Look at what the Soil Health Alliance has helped him do with the management of his soil and crops. On reduced inputs at a time of all-time highs. At a time of all-time high of inputs, vehicles and tractors and tires, if you can get it. I ordered parts from John Deere the other day overnight. When I ordered them, they said, you got a 50-50 chance. What? I'm paying for overnight delivery. UPS, FedEx, whatever. I said, yeah, 50-50. And guess what? They were right. I got some of the parts, and some of them we had to drive through to Kansas to get the next day. Just change the way you think about how we do business. Change the way you think of how you look at soil and its function. And start noticing, by the way, Roger got a picture of some other fields in the area that had standing water the other day, the whole field. He had a little bit in a terrace or two. Start changing the way you look at that going down the road. See that change on your place, on your cow herd, how you process the way you think. Share them with your banker, your lending institution. Share them with other friends. Michael and I and several in the room are in a text group. I'm in a WhatsApp group from people all over the world. I'm in several Facebook pages, several Twitter groups. That guys will call me and say, Jimmy, I'm kind of crazy, but do you think I can grow more companions with my crops? Can I do polycropping? Can I do interseeding? Yes. I tried this, this didn't work. You might try this, you might tweak this. And they tried. And other people in the group said, no, wait a minute, Jimmy. I tweaked that and I changed that. And we have a conversation because we share ideas. That's what we've always done. Let's do it some other way. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
How much rain do you get?
I get all of it when it rains. You know, we joke about that, but literally, I can take about 12 inches an hour. I've had spots of 18. It's amazing what you can do if you really work at it. And it's been a lot of fun. My dad told me before he passed away with a blood clot in 25 years ago, 2 months from now. He told me farming's no fun anymore. He said, when I started, fuel was a nickel a gallon. I could buy a tractor, a lister, and everything for $1,000. I could plow 24 hours a day with another hand. They run 2 John Deeres, 1,000 acres of grain. I can't imagine that. But they never quit. And they made money. The wheat was $3 a bushel. $2 a bushel. Of course, you know, it's 8 now, 7. The tractor I'm driving the plant with, $300,000. If I bought a new one, it's $500,000 or more. I seen the new sprayer in Arkansas the day before yesterday. See and spray. Got cameras on it, 2 rows of nozzles. Sees leaks, gets it. Sees leaks, gets it. Second row of nozzles, put the nutrients on, da-da-da-da-da. Only $860,000. That's what we're up against. I'm gonna quit. Sorry. Thank you. I'll turn that over to Robert.